What is the strangest motive that you have heard for a murder? This channel has covered cases that have involved a mother drowning her daughters to continue her sex work, to a husband paying someone to end his wife's life to fund a movie. But this case will probably trump the majority of strange motives that you have heard before. Before I start, just a quick 30 seconds to thank today's sponsor, Wicked Clothes. Wicked Clothes are one of my favourite places to shop these days, and the underwear I bought have just arrived. My new favourite design is this one right here, the True Crime Club. They also have a sale on too, so if you're looking for some bargains, it's a great place to shop right now. And if you want to treat your poochies to something special, you can check out this dog collar. And they have free shipping on orders over $75, so check them out, as I'm sure you'll find something you like, and if you do, you can use Disturbant in the coupon section to get 10% off, or you can click the link in the description and it should do it for you automatically. And now, onto the video. This case takes place in February of 2018. A lot of people love to play video games, and a young man named Kevon Watkins was no exception. Kevon was a 16-year-old lad from Macon, Georgia, and he lived there with his family. On Friday the 2nd of February 2018, Kevon's mother LaToya picked him up from high school, but she could tell that he was in a rather bad mood. Nothing out of the ordinary for a 16-year-old, but Kevon was known to be rather disrespectful towards his mother, and the two would often argue. They arrived home. Kevon's 13-year-old brother and 20-year-old sister were there too. His sister's name was Alexus. The siblings could get along, but had their arguments like all siblings do. Alexus had recently gotten engaged to the father of her 3-year-old son. When Kevon got home, he did what he usually would do. He made his way straight to his bedroom to begin a night of gaming. His mother LaToya wasn't feeling too good, so she went to her room to rest. With so many people in the house using the Wi-Fi, it would of course begin to slow down. Kevon became frustrated and angry at the slow speed of the Wi-Fi, which was making an impact on his performance on the game. He knew it was because his family were using it too. So, he went and he changed the password. Doing so would disconnect and lock everybody else out. His siblings found out pretty quickly. Kevon's little brother went to go and tell his mum what he had done, in hopes that she would be able to help resolve the situation. But a fatal confrontation was about to begin. LaToya went over to the router, unplugged it, and took it to her room. Kevon instantly knew, and he stormed into her room, demanding she plugged it back in right now. A harsh and loud exchange of words ensued. Alexus heard Kevon screaming at their mother, so she came to defend her mum from his outburst. He was threatening to beat up his own mother just because of the Wi-Fi. The argument quickly and unnecessarily got out of control. Kevon grabbed his sister and dragged her to the floor, and the two of them began to wrestle. LaToya desperately tried to de-escalate the fight and attempted to separate the pair. This attempt would prove to be unsuccessful. Kevon's rage consumed him. His eyes appeared to glaze over, and he slipped his sister into a chokehold. His arm was firmly wrapped around her neck. As much as LaToya tried, she just could not do anything but watch her daughter being choked by her son. LaToya ran to the phone and made a call to 911 to get some assistance. And 3 minutes later, LaToya's other son had also called the emergency services too. The boy said, "My brother is trying to hit my mother. He's crazy." He also told them that he had his sister in a chokehold. The police was soon dispatched and arrived in 10 minutes. The police entered the building to find Kevon with his sister. After all this time, Alexus was still in a chokehold. The officer demanded for Kevon to release her, and this time he did exactly as he was told. Alexus flopped to the ground. She was now totally unconscious. As she remained motionless, the officer came to her side to check her breathing. The officer then began to perform CPR. Upon seeing her daughter flop to the floor, LaToya broke down and screamed. The ambulance was called and she was taken to a hospital, but it became clear that Alexus was not responding to the treatment. The young mother passed away in the early hours of the following morning from asphyxiation at the hands of her own brother, all because of an argument over a Wi-Fi password. Kevon had choked her for a total of 11 minutes. The detectives questioned Kevon and wanted to know why he kept his own sister in a chokehold for such a long period of time and only stopped when the officers arrived, but he just couldn't explain why. They then told him the news: his sister had just passed away. Kevon was devastated and began to hysterically cry. He was charged and booked into a youth detention centre. The trial would begin on the 18th of August 2019. Instead of trial by jury, he waived his rights and opted for a bench trial. This is where the judge hears the testimony, reviews all the evidence, and decides on an appropriate punishment. LaToya was tasked with the devastating burden of testifying against her own son. She told the story. She said that Kevon had stormed into her bedroom, demanding the Wi-Fi router. After a loud confrontation, Alexus ran into the bedroom to defend her mother, and she grabbed Kevon. The two went to the ground, and that's when he began to choke her. The brain can be without a supply of oxygen for around 3 to 6 minutes. After this time, permanent brain damage begins. After 10 minutes without oxygen, a person will more than likely become brain dead. At the very least, Kevon had choked his sister for 11 minutes. Even if Alexus had not passed away, she would have suffered a significant amount of brain damage. Kevon did his best to explain what happened. With tears in his eyes, he said that his sister had taught him everything he knew, and he told the judge, "I never intended to kill her at all." But when asked why he never let his sister go, he replied, "Because she was going to beat me." It's possible that he was unaware of just how deadly a chokehold could be after such a long period of time. The judge believed that he did not intend to kill his sister that day, but it could not be overlooked that he refused to let her go, and because of this, her life was taken, leaving behind a 3-year-old without a mother. The judge then read out the verdict. Kevon was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Cries erupted from the benches where Kevon's family was sat. The judge spoke of how sorry she was, that he wasn't given the proper help he needed to deal with his anger appropriately. Kevon's eyes filled with tears as he told the court he was sorry. Handcuffs were placed on him as he was led away. When writing about a case, I feel like it's good practice to really think about how it must have been for the victim and the victim's family, and sometimes the killer too. And what I find incredibly devastating about this case is that to have your daughter being killed is one heartbreaking tragedy, but the fact that your daughter was killed at the hands of your own son must be a horrifying reality to face. As I was reading about this case, I was rather surprised by the decision made by the judge. Life imprisonment for a 16-year-old is a punishment I found strange. I'm by no means sympathetic towards murderers, but at the same time, I've seen far more lenient sentences for far more brutal crimes. I would be interested in hearing your opinions on this sentencing. A voluntary manslaughter sentence would require evidence that he was provoked to a point that caused a sudden, irresistible, violent impulse. The only thing that had provoked Kevon was having the Wi-Fi taken away. The judge said, if a voice of reason and humanity can be heard, then that negates the ability to use voluntary manslaughter. The voice of reason and humanity that day was his mother and his 13-year-old brother.